Talking about interesting stories. Have you guys seen this? Marc Maron, I guess, finally responded, or finally kind of let us know his thoughts on the very controversial Riyadh Comedy Festival, which already has claimed one comedian's life in terms of Tim Dillon. I'm sure some of you have heard that Tim Dillon got fired from the Riyadh Comedy Festival for some of his comments pertaining to the Saudi government and shit that they didn't like. I think he mentioned on his podcast, like, the comment that they actually didn't like. What was it again? Was it I think it was maybe it was they took offense to the morning prayer, but I think it was something weird. It was something random. It wasn't, maybe it was to do with the passports and the slaves, but it wasn't anything to do with him saying he wants to witness a fucking hand chopping off or something ceremony. Either way, a lot of comedians have been getting called out for it. Primarily people like Pete Davidson, whose father passed away in 9/11. And people are basically saying, if you agree or think about the conspiracy theory linking in Saudi Arabia allegedly to 9/11, it seemed very odd that, you know, Pete Davidson will be performing in a country that probably offer a government that most likely approved the assassination, or not approved, said approved the fucking attack on on the Twin Towers back in the day. So people are questioning that. People are questioning the principles and morals of most comedians and but we haven't heard from Marc Maron, and Marc Maron usually has very, very strong and interesting opinions regarding the Riyadh Comedy Festival, and this clip, I think, doesn't disappoint. This clip does not disappoint in terms of Marc Maron letting us know exactly where he stands when it comes to the Riyadh Comedy Festival.
Well, there's a Riyadh Comedy Festival. I don't know if you heard about that. This is true. There's a Riyadh, Saudi Arabia Comedy Festival. I mean, how do you even promote that? You know, like, from the folks that brought you 9/11, 2 weeks of laughter in the desert. Don't miss it. I mean, the same guy that's going to pay them is the same guy that paid that guy to bonesaw Jamal Khashoggi and put him in a fucking suitcase. But don't let that stop the yucks. It's going to be a good time. Full disclosure, I was not asked to perform at the Riyadh Comedy Festival, so it's kind of easy for me to take the high road on this one. Easy to maintain your integrity when no one's offering to buy it out, you know?
Exactly. And I think that's a great point he makes at the end, right? A great point he makes at the end. And it made me think in general about the point that Tim Dillon also made, where he said you always have to have a price that you have to look the other way. I think this is one of those examples, because everyone has a price. I think I don't have a price, though. I think I'm special. I think I'm unique in that way. I think I'm the type of person who's very anti going against my principles and morals, and no matter how much someone the money they'd offer me, I wouldn't take it. In the same way that I think I'm like self-sabotaging in the way that if I don't get along with somebody, like if I don't like somebody, but they offer me an opportunity, I will still say no out of principle of not liking that person. Like, nah, you're a dickhead, I don't want to work with you, you know? As opposed to what most people would do, which is collect the bag, which is take the opportunity, make good of that opportunity to progress their life and their career. Whereas me, if I don't fuck with something or somebody, if it goes against everything I stand for, I won't do it just for the principle of not doing it, which is obviously a dumb way to look at life. But we all have our ways. But I also think as well, I'm saying this from a point of never really being tested, because it's almost like, you know, well, I've made this point before, but it's almost along the same vein of why I'm a big hater of like hypothetical questions. You know type of question someone says in the fucking afters, or when you're out for dinner with friends. Oh, if somebody offered you 10 grand, would you eat a plate of shit? That type of stuff, right? Or would you kiss your mom for $1 million on the lips? You know, that sort of, I don't know, whatever. And usually people have very strong opinions when it comes to those hypothetical scenarios. But the reason why I don't like them is because they're not real. Because yes, you could say, you know, yes, the most homophobic guy in the world could say, oh, I would never suck somebody's wee-wee for any money whatsoever. But the conversation gets very different when that money's right in front of you. When that money is right in front of you, in cash, in a duffel bag, in a briefcase, and they say, hey, here's the money, here's the person, jack him off, suck him off, it gets very difficult. It gets very interesting, it gets very dicey. It gets very, you know, all over the place. So everyone's got an answer, everyone's got principles and morals. when they're not put in that position to get tested. But when it gets tested, it's different. And as much as I rag on these stand-up comedians, right, for taking the money to perform for the Saudi government, just more so because it's obviously an attempt to whitewash their crimes. They're not doing these comedy festivals or they do other dance music festivals. They're not doing them because they love comedy. They're doing these things to purposely try. They're not doing these type of things because they love the culture. They're not doing these type of things because they want to fucking laugh and smile. They're doing it clearly to try and whitewash their reputation for all the things that they've kind of been accused of as a government. Jamal Khashoggi situation comes up there. But I also have sympathy and empathy for these stand-up comedians, because I think to myself, a lot of these stand-up comedians, right? A lot of these stand-up comedians are grown men, middle-aged men with families. Some of them are just starting their families. Mark Norman being a good example of it. Just recently had a kid, recently got married. Bills, you know, money, bills, expenses. Most of these people are probably holding down an entire household, maybe looking after extended family members and shit. Siblings, close friends. They got payroll. So it is what it is. When a kid gets involved in stuff, you know, suddenly those things go out the window. And something I've heard from many men that I've kind of listened to on podcasts and shit and YouTube videos and other bits of content who get, you know, who recently have kids, especially late in life, they all say there's nothing like a lock-in. There's no lock-in that compares to having a child. Every guy says that. Even the most irresponsible man out there says there's no way, there's no lock-in greater than when you have a child. Because the only thing that you care about is that child. The only thing that you care about is making that child's life amazing. And, you know, providing for it in any way, circumstance, in every possible way. So if somebody gives you an opportunity to make, like Tim Dillon said, 375,000 for an hour set, I don't blame you for taking it. If you've got a child and you've got a wife and a family and shit, I don't blame you for trying to make sure that you look after your family, pay the bills, cover rent for the next year, cover your mortgage for maybe the next year, maybe put a down payment on the house, maybe take that money to put into a trust for your kid, for their college education, whatever you're going to do with that money. If you're going to blow it all on fucking coke and strippers, you have the right to do so if you have a family and you want to take that option on. The only thing that's weird about that Riyadh Comedy Festival, like I mentioned previously in the past, was that a lot of these stand-up comedians, much like the Playgrave DJs who were playing during the height of COVID lockdown in third world countries and not even taking a break, was that the top ones are the ones that are getting these gigs. These gigs aren't going to like the middle tier ones or the mid-tier comedians. It's going to the top tier comedians who probably, in my opinion, again, not to count people's pockets, but you'd imagine the top tier comedians, 375,000 isn't going to change Tim Dillon's life. You know, let's be fair. 375,000 isn't going to change Tim Dillon's life. But if you're a mid-tier comedian, it will. So I've always wondered that side of things. Why do these stand-up comedians that earn the most don't also never seems to be able to turn down an offer, you know? The ones that earn the most can never turn down an offer. They take up all fucking offers, but the ones who kind of need the offers never get them, you know? That's the only bad bit about it. But I understand what Mark Norman said there. Very self-deprecating, very honest. That's why we love Mark Norman. That's why we like Marc Maron, sorry, not Mark Norman. That's why we like Marc Maron.